Welcome to The Cauldron, a podcast hosted by Ed Bolden-Greer, the creator of Ravens Vail. In each episode, Ed will have free-flowing conversations about horror, life, culture, and personal growth. Expect to hear from storytellers, authors, horror experts, life gurus, thought leaders, and influencers. The Cauldron is a place where concoctions of a lot of ideas are brewed down to potions that are sometimes important and useful, sometimes eccentric and bizarre, but always just what you need. The Cauldron podcast may contain explicit language and thematic elements not suitable for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised.
Well, hey there, family. Welcome once again to the hallowed haven of the Ravens Vail Cauldron podcast, where we fan the mystical flames of inquisitiveness and stoke the embers of curiosity. Here, in this magical sanctuary of storytelling, as the cauldron simmers, we brew up concoctions of topics that resonate with the soul and spark the imagination. I'm your host, Ed Bolden-Greer, and I'm joined by the brave conjurer of curiosity, my co-host, Jacob A. Garner, a.k.a. Frady Cat.
Hello, everyone.
Before we begin, we wanted to take a moment to advise you that this episode contains discussions about cults and may include topics that could be triggering for some listeners.
Yeah.
We recognize that individuals who've had personal experiences with cults may find certain content distressing. Our exploration into this subject is conducted with the utmost respect and is not intended to diminish or judge anyone's experience. We approach these narratives with empathy and a desire to understand, not to criticize. The views and opinions expressed in this episode are solely those of Jacob and I, and they do not necessarily represent the position or policies of Small Raven Media or the Ravens Vail Podcast Network. Our discussions are meant to foster understanding and are shared from a place of curiosity and personal perspective. Listener discretion is advised.
In this episode of the Ravens Vail Cauldron podcast, we're embarking on a spellbinding journey into the realm of cults. We're not just exploring the psychology of cult dynamics, but also the allure of charismatic leaders and the dangerous ideologies that can lead to radical behavior. We're also presenting a cautionary tale, a warning about the search for belonging gone wrong. We're revealing the intricate tapestries of power, control, and the human need for connection that lie at the heart of these secretive organizations. So join us and be prepared for a thought-provoking discussion.
Hey, Jacob, how you doing, man?
I am doing fantastic.
Happy midsummer.
Happy midsummer, Ed.
Longest day of the year.
I know.
You know what
Hottest
else?
day of the year feels like it, too.
It
God.
did feel hot that day. Do you want to know something else about today?
Yeah, what's up, man?
Well, today is the 1-year anniversary of the Ravens Vail Podcast Network.
Hey!
We launched on Midsummer Day, and we've been going strong ever since.
Oh, yeah, we have.
What about them Vols?
Heck yes, bro. That was awesome. I was actually watching the game over the entire weekend. I even got my boyfriends into it. They don't give a shit about sports, but I was like, guys.
Well, I mean, it's UT.
Yeah, it's UT. We live
their
in Knoxville.
hometown,
Like,
yeah.
you have to cheer for these guys. Tony Vitella killed it. See you next year, Aggies.
For those of you that don't know, the University of Tennessee men's baseball team won the Men's College World Series.
Mm-hmm.
It took place in Omaha at Charles Schwab Field. And they, in the last game of the series, were victorious 6-5 over A&M.
It was
Texas A&M.
Yeah, and it was game 3.
Yep.
This was do or die for both teams, and at a 6-5 score. And I watched it, and as I was cleaning my apartment, I was listening to it on my headphones and stuff. I really, when I was looking at it, I did not see that much controversy about it. It seemed like it was just a very competitive, clean game that ended 6-5 on game 3.
No, the two glimpses I got to look at yesterday while it was going on seemed like it was just a good game.
Yeah.
One thing that I will tell you, I love baseball.
Yeah, same here.
But it always reminds me of going out to the stadium, and sitting and watching the game, especially if you can get box seats,
Oh, God.
and all of the stadium food, which, by the way, I hate your guts. I don't think we've talked very much about that on this podcast because we've been a little. I don't know. I don't know what to say. We've been, but Jacob and his twin, every year they give up their vices during June.
Yep.
And this year, Jacob was giving up wild women. I mean, sorry, no, he was giving up being short. No, that wasn't it. He was giving up alcohol for the month of June, sugar.
Yep.
Or added sugar, really.
Yeah. Down to about
desserts.
30 grams a day.
And he was giving up nicotine, his little pouches of love.
Yeah, I'm a little dirty zinner.
You're a little dirty zinner. And so to support him, our staff have all been doing it. We've all been trying to clean up our lifestyles and clean up our diets, especially, and exercise more. We've gone to eating salads for lunch every day.
They're pretty good.
Pretty good.
Shout out
We make
Kristen.
them. Yeah, we make them at the office, and it's really quite a tasty treat to have fresh food at lunch.
And I'll just say too, as a massage therapist, like massaging after eating some of those salads feels way better than like cramming down a Firehouse sub.
Yep. Firehouse, not a sponsor.
Not a sponsor.
Jacob and I, we have lunch before we record every episode. We're not going to talk about what we had for lunch today. It was not a salad.
No.
It was delicious.
It was great.
But walking away from that meal today feels like I'm carrying around a bowling ball.
No, I agree.
Compared to eating a salad.
Wait,
so-
Ed, how did the Old Gods of Appalachia show?
I hate your guts. Let me explain. I love the Old Gods of Appalachia. It's one of my favorite podcasts of all times. And just recently got to go see their second live show at the Bijou here in Knoxville. Was very, very good show.
Sure.
We had VIP tickets, and we went at 5:30. We got to talk to the cast, and that was very exciting. Got some pictures and everything.
I saw them, yeah.
We left about 20 minutes afterwards because they were walking you across the stage to talk to everybody.
Yeah.
About 20 minutes later, we're walking across the stage to go out of the theater because the show didn't start till 8 o'clock and they weren't going to open the doors till 7 o'clock. So we had quite a while, and we were going to go do something. We were with our friends Grace and Jordan.
Yeah.
And so we started to say, hey, why don't we go get a drink? And I think it was Grace who said, why don't we go get a drink? And Jared and I in unison said, fucking Jacob.
I got a text message, too, from Jared that said, I was told to inform you that you've ruined our night.
You've ruined our night. Well, it wasn't just that ruined our night. The next part of it was, what do you do if you've got a bunch of time in downtown Knoxville and you've already eaten dinner?
Oh, you get dessert.
Yeah, you get the fucking dessert, which we had agreed that we would not eat dessert or added sugar. So we walked around a bit and went to some of the stores down there, did a little bit of shopping, got some well-deserved gifts for some people out of town that we found. Yeah, you ruined our night.
I'm so sorry.
Because then the next step would be going back to the show. And if you've ever gone to the Bijou and gotten a drink at the Bijou.
Are you
good? So getting a rum and Coke.
Yeah.
I'm not a big cola fan.
Yeah.
I am a big rum fan. So it has a splash of color. Makes your show so much better.
I'm sure.
But yeah, the Old Gods of Appalachia show was phenomenal. As you know, you've heard me say this. They were part of the reason that our podcast exists.
Yeah.
They probably don't know that, but
they will.
Surprise. No, I was, and they can listen to our origin story, which is episode 0 of the Cauldron. I was in a funk. and I didn't know what I was going to do.
Yeah.
I love my job at the school and everything that I do in healthcare, but it wasn't fulfilling because I didn't have a creative outlet.
Yeah.
And
You're
so,
a very creative person.
yeah. And Jared, we went back and forth trying to figure out what I could do. And writing horror was always one of my passions. And so I started doing that, but it just didn't seem enough because I also wanted to do a podcast. I didn't know how to make those two things happen, together. And Jared brought me Old Gods of Appalachia. And I listened to them, and it was like the world became a bright place. If you have not listened to the Ravens Vail podcast, which is our flagship podcast, it's a storyline that takes place in Appalachia, and it's about witches or the Macquarie. I encourage you to go listen to it. It's part of my artistic expression. We have a ton of voice actors that help bring the stories to life, and I don't think we've ever told the listeners that.
Yeah, so you guys just dropped episode 2 of season 2, didn't you?
Yep. We just dropped episode 2 of season 2 on our anniversary. So it was really, really a cool experience. And for me, it's a lot of work.
Yeah, it is.
But it's fun work, that I really enjoy. And people are like, but you're trying to make it a business. And I'm like, it already is a business. We're already paying money to do this and trying to get money back. But what we're trying to do is just supplement the podcast. We're trying to, because Jared and I are obviously paying for everything. Yeah. We're trying to get the podcast to support itself. So that's why we do all the stuff we do. Plus, we get to go out to cons and do crazy, wild things like that. Jared and I are going to be going to the Nashville Horror Fest, the weekend of the 21st and 22nd, to check that out. We're not going as vendors. We're just going as guests.
Yeah.
To check out that con to see if we're going to do that next year.
I hope so,
Yeah. It looks incredible. And then on the first weekend in August 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, if I'm not mistaken, the entire cast and crew will be at CreepyCon in Knoxville,
CreepyCon.
Tennessee. It's going to happen at on the World's Fair Park at the Convention Center, and it's going to be a wild time. They're sold out from a vendor's perspective.
Nice.
And we've got an extra large booth. We're going to be giving away a lot of stuff to everybody who comes up to the table. We've got all kinds of horror stickers and paraphernalia and enamel pins and buttons and posters and all kinds of stuff. And you'll get to see Frady Cat will be there.
Yes.
And we're going to have free seated chair massage brought to you by Massage Remedy, which we're very excited to partner with. And we'll have some wonderful massage therapists out there. So we're really looking forward to that.
The key factor for all of that, you may notice, is we're giving it away, guys.
Yeah,
we'll
it's
probably
all
be
free.
the only people at CreepyCon giving stuff away for free.
I don't know about that, but yeah, we're going to be giving it all away because we want to have a conversation with you all. For those of you who are planning to come to CreepyCon, we've had a lot of our listeners tell us they're going to be there. We'll be there for autographs and conversations and questions. We're going to bring out for the first time ever our cauldron.
Yes, I'm so excited for that.
Yeah, and the cauldron that we're bringing out is a cauldron that you can put questions in. It's part of the episode that we're going to start doing where we pull out questions that listeners have asked us, and we're going to put those in the cauldron. And then we'll be pulling one or two out each episode to respond. So if you want to hear your name on the podcast, or if you have burning questions that you'd like to ask, stop by the booth, and we'll give you more information about that in a future podcast. But stop by the booth and give us your questions.
Just real quick, Ed. Just real quick. You know how you and I always talk about the news?
Oh yeah.
Okay, dude. Did you read what happened earlier today?
I read a lot of news this morning, so a lot of stuff was happening today. I mean, are you talking about Trump's legal team or?
No. We talk about that clown show some other episode. But do you remember the name Julian Assange?
Yes.
The WikiLeaks dude?
Yeah, he was the founder of WikiLeaks, and he stole, or someone gave, I guess is a better way, U.S. military secrets.
Yeah. So,
Or government secrets, not necessarily military.
yeah, it was pretty nuts. So, I mean, this all broke loose in 2010, if you remember correctly. Chelsea Manning was the one that gave him a lot of, information, and WikiLeaks published it.
Right. He's in prison right now, if I'm not mistaken. And I think, wasn't he guilty of the Espionage Act?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, because he published a lot of the documents and had like secret agents' names, and he didn't redact them or black them out. And it obviously
Put them in danger.
I think that there actually were like at least a handful of people that were actually killed as a direct result of them publishing that information. So regardless how you feel about Julian Assange one way or the other, a lot of people look at him as a hero outside of the U.S. A lot of people inside of the U.S. absolutely hate him, and we're trying to really throw the book at him. And he kind of played this like monkey in the middle keep away game where he was seeking asylum in various other countries and stuff like that. But the government of the U.S. finally reached a plea deal with him.
Really?
And he's going to agree to it. So the plea deal is he will plead guilty to conspiracy of receiving private government documents and information and then releasing it, which is a 5-year prison term, right? But since he's going to plead guilty to it, the United States government made him a deal that they will commute his sentence to time served because he's been in prison for about 7 years, right? So he's, if I'm not mistaken, he's on a plane right now to go to the, what was it called? The, something with an M, the Mariana Islands?
North Mariana. I'm looking it up right now.
Yeah, the Mariana Islands, which is a U.S. territory, because Assange said he does not want to step foot on U.S. soil, and he will go to a federal court in that U.S. territory, plead guilty to it, and then he's essentially free to go back to his home country of Australia.
I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist because how I hate conspiracy theories. I wonder what information he has that we want.
Well, interestingly enough, did you see what the former vice president said?
Which former vice president?
Oh, Mike Pence.
Oh, Mikey boy.
He criticized the plea deal almost immediately, and he called it a, quote, miscarriage of justice, end quote.
I wonder what they have on Trump.
I know. That's exactly where my mind went when he said that. So who knows? But that's crazy. Just to give you a rough idea, right? I was listening to NPR talk about it earlier today. They said if you had a kid born when the WikiLeaks scandal popped off, they would be a teenager at this point. That's how long this has been going on.
Yeah, I'm looking at a picture. He looks old now. Like he was kind of dashing when all that happened. But I mean, 7 years have really been hard on him.
Well, 14 years of the U.S. government breathing down his neck, and then 7 years in a prison age.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to bring that up. I thought that was crazy.
No, I think that's wow. Just trivia here for a moment.
Yeah,
we're getting right as we speak. We're getting our new chairs in the conference room.
Heck yeah! Super excited for that.
So you know what I'm excited about?
What?
You and I don't have to put them together.
Oh, there we go. Kind of got our own little cult going on.
Yep. So Jacob, before we dive into our discussion on cults, how about we do Would You Rather question?
Oh yeah, come on, man. Let's do it.
Okay, here we go. Would you rather have a familiar?
Okay.
You know what a familiar is?
Yeah, it's like a spirit or an entity, right?
Yeah, like a witch's cat.
Yeah.
Would you rather have a familiar that's a ghostly raven, we could only wish, who can pass through walls, or a mystical cat that glows in the dark and grants you 9 lives? By the way, before you answer, regardless of the powers, I want both a raven and a cat. I have affinities for both of those, if you didn't already know that. So, ghostly raven or glowing cat?
I think the whole 9 lives thing seems really enticing. I just recently had a cat move in with me. We're about 3 days in.
So hold on. We're not talking 60s cat like...
Yeah, I just had this cool cat.
Because one of your boyfriends did just move in with you.
Yeah, he did. And he brought a cat with him.
Okay.
Right.
So metaphorically, cat guy, and realistically, actual cat moved in with you.
And I got to admit...
you do know that we used to call guys cats.
Yeah.
He's a wild cat, man.
Yeah, that's a cool cat. I'm coming to really like try to have to learn how to live with a pet because I mean anybody that listened to the Jacob Garner episode, you guys know that like I moved out at 16. I've not had a pet in the last almost 13 years now.
It's hard to have a pet when you're living out of your car.
Yeah, it's pretty difficult. And one thing I will say is that I'm not used to having to watch where I walk in my own apartment. This cat is pretty large, and he will just run into me at full speed while I'm trying to walk. So,
So cute.
it's kind of like the drawback. If I get the 9 lives, I'll probably lose 3 or 4 of them because I know I'm going to trip over the thing, break my friggin' neck. All right. Wait. Anyways,
You'll get used to a cat walking between and around your legs as you're walking.
I got short legs,
And-
Ed. I can't.
Yes,
there's
you do.
not much
You've got
space
very short legs.
for it to walk fast.
So you said the cat was big. Is it like a chonker big cat, or is it like a Mancoon big cat?
No, it's just chonky.
Oh,
Like
best
respectfully,
The best kind.
this cat's overfed. But anyway, I don't want to fat shame the cat. Sorry, Thomas.
His name's Thomas?
Yeah, Thomas the cat, the Tom cat.
Hey, Thomas, we love you.
All right, I got a would you rather. You ready?
Okay, yeah.
Okay. Would you rather have a magical mirror that lets you talk to your past self or a mystical diary where anything you write about someone else becomes true for a day?
I don't know that I would find talking to my past self very entertaining because my present self already knows all that stuff.
Word.
Now, if I could talk to my future self, or maybe that's the implication here that by me talking to my past self, my past would change.
Shout out to the previous
Time travel, yeah. That's what I was thinking. So maybe I could change the course of things, but like we said in the last episode, I don't have that many regrets. There's a few things that I could change, but I doubt that they would change my outcome.
Yeah.
So I'd probably go with the mystical diary, and I'm going to make an assumption. I want to clarify because you're the one who came up with this question. Anything I write comes true, right?
Anything.
So,
But only true for a day.
true for a day, but that would mean that I could write some funny things. Like I could say, Jacob will have 16 1-inch penises all over his face today, protruding from his face. And that would come true, right?
Yes, I guess technically yes.
Okay. But I could also write in...
Jacob's a millionaire? That'd
No,
be cool.
well, for a day. But I could also write in that these people that I love are going to have the best day of their life.
Just write that every day. It's like a
Yeah.
daily affirmation.
Yeah.
Thing.
So there's no limitations. I read no limitations. So that's what I do. I'd choose the diary because I like journaling anyway.
Yeah.
And I'd just wake up 10 minutes extra every morning, and I would bless somebody with something for the day that's not permanent. Because it can't be permanent, but it would be a blessing to them, maybe.
I can see that.
And then I would write all of my people, which includes all the listeners and everybody, would have an absolutely fucking phenomenal day, whatever that means to them.
I like that.
Yeah. Thank you for asking me that. I like when you ask me these questions. It makes me think.
Well, real quick, since I got some questions coming your way, you ready for your dad joke?
Aren't I always?
All right.
Only if you call me daddy.
Would you like to hear a daddy joke?
Yes, I would.
Why don't we tell secrets on a farm in the summer?
Oh, God, I have a feeling that... Is this anything about the children of the corn?
I knew you were going to say that. No, but the reason why we don't tell secrets on a farm in summer is because the corn has ears, the potatoes have eyes, and the beans stalk.
Fuck. You know who's absolutely going to love that joke? One of our good friends and listeners, Stacy. Stacy, that I'm gonna declare that that's your joke for the day.
There you go, Stacy.
Well, Jacob, today's discussion is involving the topic of cults,
Okay.
which can be sensitive.
Oh, yeah.
And we've already had our disclaimer, our warning, if you will. But they can also potentially be unsettling.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that everybody understands that we intend to have a frank, respectful conversation
Yeah.
about this topic. Family, we encourage you that if at any point the content becomes overwhelming, we know that Jacob and I support your decision to disengage from the discussion. We have strong opinions about this subject from our personal experiences. Jacob, I guess I would call it a minor but deep financial experience, and mine from family experiences and from people I love who've been involved in cults. And so I just want everybody to feel comfortable. But I feel like we have to get this information out there.
No, I think so. I think it's important.
I was reading, and I know you have something because we talked about it earlier, the difference between a cult and religion. I'm going to say what I've got here that I put a note down because it's a long one, but you've got a summary of it that I really liked. And I think that's from one of the videos that we watched as a resource for this.
Yeah.
So the difference between a cult and religion is often been debated, but there are several distinguishing factors. The first typically is the size and the organization. Cults typically are smaller and are less organized. Religions usually have a larger number of followings, and they're usually well established over long time periods. That goes right into the age. Religions are often older and have been established for generations, and cults are usually newer movements. Now, that's not to say, and I'm going to go ahead and bring this out. I know we'll hit on it and talk about it later, but we often hear people call Christians cult that are non-Christians, and I can understand that in some cases, but there are Christian cults.
Oh, yes.
Okay. We'll be talking about some of those, but Jacob and I do not believe that Christianity, if you want to use that term, the followers of Christ are a cult. And in no way are we saying that, but we do believe there are Christian cults. Okay. Then beliefs and practices are the next criteria. And although if we look at it broadly, both cults and religions are usually based on some type of belief, whether it's spiritual or not. And often we find that cults, the differentiation is that cults are often centered on a charismatic leader.
Yes.
And usually the practices are not always what society would call normal. They're usually socially deviant or extreme. Religions tend to have beliefs that align with mainstream values, like don't kill, don't steal, that type of thing. Another criteria is openness and legitimacy. Religions are generally open to scrutiny and are considered fairly legitimate by society at large, whereas cults are typified by their secretive nature and are often viewed as very suspicious. And then the last one that I'll talk about is that cults often employ like a coercion to get members. They will almost brainwash, or I guess they do brainwash the people that they recruit into their cults, and they target that coercion. It's very targeted. Whereas religion is usually typically out there reaching out to the masses, saying, "Come, be part of us." Whereas cults are looking at a very thin slice of society today that they target. So you had a very, that's a lot of information to take in, but you had a thing from the video that summarized it a little better, I think.
It was from a TED Talk that you had sent me. If anybody's interested, it's a 7-year-old video on YouTube, but it holds up extremely well. It's got some nice infographics. We'll link it in the show notes. But to paraphrase what they said specifically in relation to what qualifies as a cult and a religion, I really liked what they said. They said that a religion at large, and generally speaking, will attempt to still adhere to the societal expectations and rules of which the members are a part of. Okay? A cult specifically tries to alienate its members and its organization to exist as a separate entity outside of society, it also feeds into the idea that the cult and its members are being persecuted, and their persecution justifies their righteous intent or mission.
Gotcha.
And very similar to what you were saying about religion, organized religion today casts a wide net and says, be a part of something bigger, be a part of our organization and our movement. A cult says you were chosen to be different.
Yeah.
Here's why.
And preying on people who need that engagement.
Yes. People that are usually gone through some sort of professional or personal sense of loss. They're in an emotionally vulnerable state. And to some of our listeners, you may think to yourself, well, organized religion does that too. This is incredibly more nefarious, especially when it comes to control aspects.
We hear in today's society people, especially on social media, people throwing around the term indoctrination.
Yes.
It really comes down to cults indoctrinate people into their way of thinking.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that we would have a little bit of conversation on some of the more famous cults.
Yeah.
Before we even get into that, though, I will point out we have somebody that we work with who was in a small religious cult.
Yes.
Who had to extricate herself from that cult. And I'm so very proud of her.
Me too.
She was in the cult before we knew her, but the human being that she is phenomenal.
Yes. And
we love her. And then in my life, I have 3 separate incidences, okay? 2 of them are with family members, okay? Then another one was a religious movement that my mother was a part of. And it, from the outside, looked like it was part of a larger religious movement. But when you got down to it, it was just one little church that was really, really bad. Like, I can't even tell you how bad it was. We'll discuss it during this episode. But so I come from a place of trauma, if you will, because of all that, right? Not direct trauma to me, but trauma to people I love, and a little bit to me, because those things tend to trickle down, and it trickled down to me and my brother through my mom.
yes.
So I thought that we would look at some of the most famous ones, and I want to start talking about Jim Jones and the People's Temple.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It started in the 1950s and went on, but the Jonestown Massacre is probably one of the most famous, not the famous, but probably one of the most famous stories of a cult, real life stories of a cult. And if listeners, if you don't know it, there's lots and lots of information on the interwebs out there for it. But did you do some research on the?
Oh, yeah. Jim Jones and the People's Temple, I believe his movement was called. Mm-hmm. And you hit on something that I think is very important, that much like how in your personal experience that on the surface, the organization that you were referring to was part of a larger picture. One thing that really surprised me during the research is that I found out that there were 10,000 active cults estimated to be in the U.S. right now.
Yep.
And just like Jones's People's Temple and the organization that you were talking about, they're hiding in plain sight. You really believe that they are a legitimate religious organization that has nothing but the benefit and well-being of their followers in mind, but it could not be further from the truth the moment you dip beneath the surface. Jim Jones's People's Temple, it was, really picking up steam in the, 60s when there was a lot of counterculture swelling amongst the ranks here in the U.S. The idea was a lot of really socialistic type of ideology, really progressive, oddly enough, too. Jones was credited as having a lot of African Americans in positions of leadership during this time. And obviously the civil rights movement's in full swing. So when you combine the idea that he was giving, housing and food and monetary assistance to his followers, and then he was also championing the civil rights movement that was actively going on, you really thought Jim Jones was a man of the people.
Yes.
You really thought that he was on the right side of history.
Absolutely. Unless you go watch the Netflix special, How to Become a Cult Leader.
Yeah.
And just for the listeners here, that entire cult movement is where we get the expression drink the Kool-Aid. So,
yeah. And for the people who are familiar with this, because it is so famous, I'd be remiss to not point out that it was actually Flavor Aid.
yeah,
It wasn't Kool-Aid. I'm sure the PR people for Kool-Aid have been pissed about that ever since, but that really shows you the impact of this tragedy where it was more than, 900 people?
Yeah, it was
Died?
a lot of people. 900 members, I think, is what they counted.
Now, some drank the poisoned Flavor Aid
Some drank it
willingly,
and others were
forced to at gunpoint, and it is so part of our public knowledge now that we use a term that on the surface seems relatively playful and benign, but the meaning is so messed up. Like if you say,
oh my God, you've drank the Kool-Aid.
oh yeah, you think that the Vols are going to win the collegiate, World Series, oh yeah, Jacobs drank the Vol Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
And that's funny to some people.
That would be Orangeade.
Orangeade. But really what that is alluding to is the mass murder and suicide of 900 people, men, women, and children.
Yeah. Also, maybe it was you that said this earlier. I know that there's a big controversy about the U.S. Congressman Leo Ryan.
Yes.
The whole thing was he went to the compound of the People's Temple and was investigating allegations of human rights abuse.
Yes.
And he didn't get killed, and he wasn't made to drink the Kool-Aid.
No, he was killed.
Not there, though.
No, not at Jonestown.
Yeah.
He got killed trying to leave.
He got killed trying to leave. But that's what started the entire thing. That was the downfall of the People's Temple, is that it was a revolutionary, what they termed revolutionary suicide. Jones himself orchestrated it. And the Kool-Aid had cyanide in it.
Yes, it did. They had these large vats. Most of the prominent members were being prepped for weeks leading up to this night, saying stuff like, the U.S. government, they're coming to shut us down because they're afraid of what we can do. And we can change, American society and world society for the better. He did the classic cult stuff where he refused to allow any of the people that lived in Jonestown to have any sort of communication with the outside world.
That's very culty.
He kept them awake for days at a time on these rambling sermons, not letting them get sleep is another classic cult activity, sleep deprivation.
Well, and a mark of a cult leader, if you watch those videos, is that they are prolific in their ability to continue to talk.
Who does that remind you of? Somebody that just rambles on for a long time about nonsense.
Are you talking about Dopper Donnie?
Yeah.
Good.
I think you could make a legitimate argument, Ed. Maybe this is a hot take. I think you can make a legitimate argument that the MAGA movement is cult-like.
Oh, no. They've done studies to compare the whole thing, to compare MAGA Republicans to cults and the cult criteria, and they meet all of them.
I'm sure they do.
Yeah.
I mean, it can't be understated that even though Jim Jones was unarguably just an evil human being, he had charisma oozing out of him.
Yeah, and we should also say that even though cults may be bad at their core, they do sometimes do good things.
Jesus, yeah.
For people, and not necessarily the people that are living in the compounds that are members of the cults, but sometimes they do good things. But I think the whole mindset behind being a cult leader is you do not have good intent.
No.
You may think you do, but I don't think that you could call, unless you're insane, that you could call for 900 people to kill themselves,
Well, hey there, family. I'm Kristen Newby, the voice of Sybil here at the Ravens Vail podcast. At Ravens Vail, we love telling you our story. That's why I'm excited to tell you about Appalachian Horror Fest 2024. Appalachian Horror Fest is an evening of music and storytelling themed around the macabre. The event will take place Saturday, October 12th, 2024 at Central Cinema in Knoxville, Tennessee from 5:30 until 9:30 p.m. Our hauntingly talented musicians will serenade you with eerie tunes that echo through the misty Appalachian foothills. Gather round as our master storytellers weave their blood-curdling tales. Legends of restless spirits, vengeful ghosts, and ancient curses will dance in your imagination. Tickets are on sale now at AppalachianHorrorFest.com/tickets. Oh, storytellers. If your words can raise goosebumps and summon sleeping spirits, step into the spotlight. Submit your spine-chilling tale at AppalachianHorrorFest.com/storytellers. Appalachian Horror Festival, where nightmares come to life. We hope to see you there.
So we've talked about the People's Temple now. My favorite, if I can just be that bold, story that came out. It came out in the 80s, but it actually was happening in the 60s. Was called Helter Skelter.
Oh, yes.
And the name was taken from a Beatles classic, and it was about the Manson family that was led by Charles Manson. And it was a very bizarre cult.
Oh, yeah.
And so I became fascinated after watching that movie. I read the book, and I've kind of been fascinated. Every so often, I would go out and check to see what the status of Manson was, you know? So I've kind of followed that, and golly, how charismatic do you have to be to get people to go out and murder people for you?
Oh, yeah.
You know?
I mean, and one thing that was nuts about Charles Manson was he tried to shirk all the responsibility, even though he was directly responsible for these people's murders. He's like, I never did it. I never did. You know, dude, you know, when we were at FrankenCon, did you walk by that booth of that dude that was like selling serial killer memorabilia?
Yeah.
He had actual letters from his correspondence with Charles Manson for sale.
It still astounds me that he died on November 19th, back in 2017. He was 83 years old when he died.
Made it that long.
Yeah. I mean, it's astounding.
The whole Helter Skelter thing was wild. You know, clearly they were on a lot of psychedelic drugs and he kept them isolated, and he was so in control of their lives that if he told them the sky was red, they believed it, you know? But it's insane to think that the Beatles, of all people, were predicting on the White Album that there was an impending race war between whites and blacks.
Well, that's exactly what he was doing. I mean, look at the Tate Bianca murders that his family committed. He had declared Helter Skelter, a race war against the whole U.S., basically, and against the world.
He literally thought, for the people who aren't familiar with this, he thought that by having his followers go out and kill these people and act and try to frame it like they were just a group of random black people killing these innocent, you know, actors and directors and whatever, that it would kick off a broader race war. He thought that it was his responsibility to start Helter Skelter, which is just nuts. And there's a little cave actually on the property where they set up on Manson Ranch or whatever. That was that old abandoned movie set. Charles Manson preached to everybody that when Helter Skelter popped off, that small little cave on the property would be the only safe space to save them from the impending doom of the race war that they themselves were going to start. It's almost like if Chicken Little, who always said that the sky was falling, caused a meteorite to crash into the earth to prove his point right.
Right.
Thank God he was wrong. I think anybody that looked at Charles Manson, too, just knew 5 seconds into looking at the guy that he was batshit bonkers crazy. I mean, the swastika on his forehead definitely did not help. But one thing I think that this really highlights as well with Jim Jones and Charles Manson, I'm glad we brought them up back to back, is that it doesn't matter if it was 8 people or 800 plus people. If you are charismatic enough and say the correct combinations of words with enough conviction to a vulnerable population, you will have a following.
Yeah. Charles Manson's family was about 100 members in total. And kept them by requirement, evidently, on amphetamines and hallucinogens like LSD all the time.
Yeah.
Like all the time.
And, there was a lot of credible reports that Jim Jones, towards the end of his life, was heavily abusing amphetamines. And that, for those who've never looked too much into amphetamines, one of the number one side effects of using them repeatedly with chronic abuse is paranoia. You really start to believe that somebody's out to get you, whether it's the man, the government, the police, etc. And once you can stir up your entire congregation to also heavily abuse amphetamines, of course they're going to believe you when they say, look at behind every tree, rock, in every shadow, somebody's lurking to destroy us. And it's scary in the modern day that there's still groups of people that believe this sort of idea, whether it's the man, whether it's police or Democrats. Dude, can I tell you about the cult that I was donating money to?
Yeah.
So
I've never got to hear the whole story, so this will be interesting.
Okay, so I just want to say, in hindsight, it's funny that I was so naive that I ended up losing.
Was so naive?
Yeah, just do the quick math.
Hold on. Was?
Shut up. Just do the quick math real quick, Ed.
Mm-hmm.
What is 250 times 24?
It's about 6,000.
So I gave.
What is 6,000?
I gave $6,000 to a communistic cult called Naddlefed.
Wow.
Yep. Naddlefed stands for the National Labor Federation. And you may be thinking to yourself, wait, a communistic cult? Communists are atheists, and cults have to be religious in nature. Nope. They just have to worship. Yep. They just have to worship one charismatic leader.
Yep.
So I'll just give you the quick overview. Essentially, Naddlefed was founded in the early 1970s by a guy who was born under the name Gerald Doden. But he wanted,
what a boring name.
Very boring name. And especially for the leader of a cult that would preach revolution. And he had very heavy socialistic ties and his idea of redistribution of wealth and whatnot, that he felt like Gerald Doden didn't really sound like a revolutionary. So he changed his name to Gino Parente. So he kind of had like a Mexican revolutionary, like super official sounding name. Anyway, he targeted a bunch of like low income and unemployed individuals through a lot of like community services and activism during the 70s, which was very popular. Now, he knew that his overarching message about stockpiling weapons and like Sacramento and all this other stuff and the impending doomsday, that he said at any moment he's going to mobilize his cult and they are going to storm specifically police headquarters and kill all the cops to then give the power back to the people. He kept everybody on edge in his organization to be ready to die at any moment, right? Now, obviously that's a hard pill to swallow. So what Naddlefed ends up doing is that they splinter off into a bunch of shell corporations, I guess would be the correct term.
Shell nonprofits.
Shell nonprofits that on the surface seemed good and wholesome in what they were attempting to do. And that's how their asses got to me. So there was a organization that was called the Coalition of Concerned Medical Professionals. So shortly after I became licensed as a massage therapist in this state, I received a brochure and kind of like a package in the mail. I have no idea how they figured out that I was actually a licensed massage therapist.
They got that because Tennessee has an Open Public Records Act, and they can get the mailing addresses of any healthcare worker.
Holy shit. So I get this packet, and I'm reading it, and I got to give them credit. Whoever their PR team is, fantastic job with the brochure.
Sold you.
Sold me, got my dumb ass. So I end up going to their YouTube video, and they had this wonderful, touching video. I don't even want to link it because it might influence other people in the falling into it. But they took a bunch of dentists and dental hygienists and dental assistants deep into Appalachia, and they opened up a high school gymnasium and performed emergency root canals, tooth pulls on rotted teeth, and replacement dentures and full prosthetics for their teeth completely for free for the most underserved section of Appalachia where they would never be able to afford this stuff. And it was so touching because...
Well, hold on. It was touching. And like I said, cults can do some good things.
Exactly.
However, if you start to look, let's just look at your $6,000, okay? If you look at the budget for those organizations, they're paying over 75% of their money back to the home organization.
It's like a pyramid.
Yeah. And that 25% that they retain gets put out for good use because they have to prove, in order to keep that nonprofit tax status, they have to prove they're doing stuff.
Exactly. And I fell for it, hook, line, and sinker. They would call me.
Well, you have a really good heart, and what I want to give you some peace about is, so just assume that your $6,000 went to help people in Appalachia.
And if that was what happened,
Let's just say that happened.
I now know that there are way better avenues for me to donate my money. But oddly enough, I was listening to a podcast.
I have a nonprofit. It's called the Pockets of Ed.
Oh, really?
Yeah, if you'd like to donate.
No, I heard the guy that runs that's a cult leader.
I'm not good looking enough to be a cult leader.
I was listening to a podcast called Time Suck with Dan Cummins, and part of what he does is true crime and everything like that. And he was talking about cults. Specifically, he was talking about Naddlefed. And then during the episode, he goes, and here's something that's kind of crazy. You may have been a part of or have been donating money to one of their subsidiaries that they have underneath their umbrella. And he just started listing some of them. The California Homemakers Association, the Eastern Service Workers Association. And then he goes, the Coalition of Concerned Medical Professionals. It literally took the air out of me. I stopped walking. I was working at the clinic. I stopped walking and had to play it back. And I went, did he just say what I think he said? Sure enough, he breaks it down sort of the same way you did, where he says they kept some portion of it to keep the charade going, that they were being helpful, and then funneled the rest back to Naddlefed. I called the office phone for a CCMP and said...
The call center.
Yeah. And I spoke to a representative, and I said, excuse me, I need to have one question answered. Do you guys know who Parente is? And are you guys affiliated with, or have you been affiliated with Naddlefed? The person on the phone goes, hold on, I'm going to have to take you to my supervisor, transfer you over. Quiet for 15 minutes, start asking these questions. The person goes, well, we used to be affiliated, but, Parente passed away a couple of years ago, so the organization's really not what it used to be. We still believe in community outreach. Don't you support the cause, blah, 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 blah. And I told them, I said, if any of the money that I've been donating to you guys is stockpiling these weapons that you guys are planning to kill police officers with in a revolution, I don't want any of my money going to that. And they refused to take me off of their donation list. I had to go to my bank and cancel that card, and then specifically tell them that if this organization tries to get money from me, to not allow it to happen again. But they had me on the hook for 2 years, Ed. I had no idea.
Sorry you got involved in that.
Shit was crazy.
Just goes to show you need to come to me for big decisions.
I know. I thought I was doing the right thing, whatever.
And you were doing it with the right heart. So the next one, this one really bothers me. I'm just going to tell you.
Yeah.
This next one is called Love Has Won.
Love Has Won?
That's its name today, the movement's name. It's a group that claims to offer spiritual ascension, but I can clue you in a little bit more because I know you've heard of this group. You just haven't heard of this name because they have multiple names. Their original name in their website, which I want you to look up, okay?
Okay.
Is called the Galactic Federation of Light. And I know
Shut
you
up,
did some of
that's their name?
That's their name, the Galactic Federation of Light. And their founder, who's no longer around, her name was Amy Carlson. She and her followers believed that she was the divine being, 19 billion years old, reincarnated of Jesus Christ. So all the way back, but after Jesus was killed, she is the reincarnation. Now, I know that sounds a little weird.
A little?
Well, Trump is the reincarnation, evidently. Maybe there's more than one. And I say that in all jest. He is not the reincarnation of Jesus, nor is he God's chosen. But That's what she asserted,
Okay.
and her people believed. They mummified her.
Shut up. Really?
They mummified her. Her body was found mummified in Crestone, Colorado, where the organization currently is. Did you find the website?
Yeah. Hold on.
Okay. Galactic Federation of Light.com.
Okay. Hey. Oh, hold on. This video looks sick. So it looks like a modern day comic book drawing of like a really buff blonde dude and a really beautiful blonde girl wearing like spacesuits. Do you mind if I just like listen to the video real quick?
Well, I think we're on different sites. I think you're on one of the sister sites. Just peek your head around here. This is what the Galactic Federation of Light looks like, their corporate site.
Oh.
And I think you're on one of their sister sites. But go ahead. I see the one that you're talking about.
Yeah. It looks like the website that you're on. It looks kind of like a fan page for like a local Star Trek chapter.
Yeah, it's not.
It's kind of weird.
So just to prove to you it's not, it goes under About Us. It's spiritual support
Oh, cool.
and Light Workers Project.
Oh, okay.
I'll just read this one. Join the Light Workers Project and become a beacon of light and love in the world. That sounds really good.
That sounds wonderful.
At the Galactic Federation of Light, our mission is to unite light workers from all corners of the globe, empowering them to step out of the shadow and embrace their true purpose with pride by participation in this campaign and tagging blah, blah, blah.
I actually had heard of these people now that you're talking about it. So they had levels to their belief system. Like a level 5 light worker, you were basically like a powerful wizard or something like that. But something I thought was really interesting is that they have a negative aspect where instead of being a positive 5, if you're a negative 5, you're a like dark worker zombie that is purposely trying to keep the other people's light from shining. And this lady used to cause during her sermons, she would make her followers fight off the shadow forces in the middle of her sermon, as if while she was doing this, the dark forces were assailing the building that they were in. So they would be punching out at the air, like using magical hula hoops and stuff like that to get the spirits away from them.
Yep. Amy Carlson made her followers refer to her as Mother God.
Mother God, wow. Let's just look at this video real quick.
On Gaia, I am Seraphine, your guardian from the Galactic Federation of Light.
Okay.
Prepare to embrace your supreme sovereignty as we unveil the mysteries behind the worship genes and their imminent elimination.
The worship genes.
You feel the chains
That's
of
kind of cool.
inherited reverence fall away, liberating you to share.
This is like really subliminal messaging type stuff too. It's
Yeah,
kind of weird.
it
It's a
looks like-
19-minute long video.
We're not going to
No,
play all the way
fuck
through
no,
that.
I'm
But
not.
that looks like some kind of AI generated crap.
No, it definitely does. It reads like it too. I was watching some of this video before we went on air, and they're talking about a lot of really like classic cult stuff like you were the only person that could stop the downfall of the light.
So I'm going to,
Dude, the comment section under here is nutso.
yeah.
Here, I'm just going to read one. Thank you, Father, Mother, God. Thank you, Christ Consciousness. Thank you, Galactic Federation of Light. Something, something, something. My frequency of light has increased by 2 levels. Warriors of Light fighting in her name. Amen. Never dim. Okay, well.
Yeah. I'm going to do this next part very cautiously.
Go for it.
Okay. I'm going to have Jacob just step around the side here. And I'm not going to use names.
Yeah.
But I have a family member that I've never met who is a cult leader.
Whoa. That's a nice website, though.
Yeah, very nice website. As you can see, I'm going to read one testimonial. I'm trying to be respectful here. I am afraid of this person.
Yeah.
You know? You see what I'm saying?
The website was nuts because
Yeah.
it's like showing. There was an image I saw earlier of like a painting of them with light emanating from behind their head, like there was some divine being.
Here's just some topics and titles. I'll just let you read them, Jacob.
Okay.
Just the ones I point out.
Are we God's artificial intelligence? Who are you? What if you're not? Life on purpose? How to create a conscious life? 12 ways to identify yourself in the world of healing.
And some of those things sound really good, but here again, I'm going to try to be very respectful. The context from which they come is a direct connection and directly speaking to God. So that's really all I want to say about that one. But I thought that you might be interested in seeing that.
That's fucking nuts, Ed.
Yeah.
I can't believe you and I both have such close run-ins with cults.
Well, there's lots of others. Let's talk for just a brief moment. And I want to make sure that everyone understands that we're separating this out.
Yes.
When I talk about this next group, we are not talking about, and there's not going to be a lot for us to say about this group, but I think it stands as a point where we have a religious organization called the Mormon Church, Church of Latter-day Saints.
Yes.
But a cult broke off from the Church of Latter-day Saints and formed the fundamentalist Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, led by Warren Jeffs, who was imprisoned, and he was imprisoned for some very weird, crazy things. Have you heard of this group?
Yes, I have. That podcast I was telling you about earlier where I figured out that I was giving money to Naddlefed. He did actually talk about the fundamentalist Church of Latter-day Saints. They use all of the same tactics that you would see when it comes to classic cult ideology. They had the authoritarian leadership that nobody could question in Warren Jeffs.
Well, Warren Jeffs is currently serving a life sentence in Texas for child sexual assault following 2 convictions in 2011. He presided over his church with an iron fist.
Oh, yeah.
And if he wanted to take your 8-year-old daughter to bed, you let him.
He had multiple wives, which, whatever, you know. But the problem with it is that they weren't all over the age of 18.
Right. And he could also, he believed he could also marry his daughters.
Oh, Jesus.
To take them as wives. So incest with minors, it was just a disgusting thing. Now, I'm not saying polygamy is disgusting. Don't get that wrong.
No.
I'm saying that polygamy with your daughter as a wife at 8 years old is disgusting.
Yeah, I don't even believe that's a hot take.
It's not a hot take.
If anybody believes that that's a hot
fact.
take, go ahead and stop listening.
Yeah, just go ahead and stop. So there's not a lot to say about it. I don't think that this organization ceased when he left, but it did take a large turn. It's not what it used to be, but it is one of the cults that are listed that the U.S. government follows to make sure that they're not doing something that they're not supposed to. Child marriage, child abandonment, sexual assault, human trafficking, child sexual abuse. These were all things that came out of that cult and the leaders of that cult, not just Warren Jeffs, but out of that cult, lots of people were prosecuted.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because it was rotten from the top down. Tone gets set at the top for these types of things. I guess, real quick, I do want to say there is some wonderful resources. Anybody that's listening, if you yourself or somebody else you actually know, you suspect that you or them are part of a cult, there's 2 major things that you need to look out for, okay? If they use fear manipulation to keep you under their thumb, say we're the only ones that have the answers, you're only safe with us. And if it seems like there are very high exit costs. And now I don't mean like if you want to quit the group that you're in, they say you have to pay a $10,000 leave fee. I mean exit costs in terms of you will be cut off from all of your loved ones and friends.
Well, we've had, here again, keeping names out of this, but we have family who exited the Mooney cult.
Yes.
I'm just going to call it what it is, or the Unification Church, formerly known as the Moonies, and had to go through deprogramming and lots of psychological intervention to be okay.
Yeah. It can cause a lot of very psychological scars because being in a cult, especially being raised in a cult, it's a lot like being that frog in a boiling pot of water. If you never notice a temperature change, by the time you notice it, it's too late.
Too late.
So
Well,
there is a really cool website that if anybody's interested in an organization that specializes in helping people kind of deprogram and break free from cults, it's called the International Cultic Studies Association, or the ICSA. They have a hotline, very easy to call, or you go to their website. The hotline is 239-514-3081. The biggest thing that I took away from looking at that website is that they say the cult or the organization that you're a part of wants to make you feel like if you leave, you're nothing and you're alone, but we're here for you.
right. And I don't want to get deep into the Unification Church, but I do think that it some of the things that we can talk about in the Unification Church. Sun Moon was the founder, and it started in South Korea, and moved to America out of New York. And they talk about Moon as the second coming of Christ.
Yeah.
Okay. They are notorious for mass weddings
So bizarre.
and blessing ceremonies. The mass weddings they've performed ceremonies for up to 10,000 people. Now get this, those 10,000 people getting married didn't know each other prior to the organization putting them together.
Yeah. Typically, like on the day of their wedding day, they meet the person that, Sun Moon has designated as their divine partner. So they blindly agree to it. That's the wildest part, is that they're so convicted in their belief, they go, oh, this relative stranger, divine intervention, I'm going to love them.
Yeah, one of the largest, and this will be of interest to you, but one of the largest mass weddings that has ever taken place under the Unification Church happened in the Philippines.
Shut up. Really?
Yep.
I wonder what the success rate on those marriages are.
I don't know. I don't know that we have any statistics on that. I think that whole movement, well, first of all, it had significant potential to have changed the outcome or the direct course of my life.
Yes. Yeah, you're right.
If you go down that logic train, go back to time travel, if this hadn't happened, then this wouldn't have happened.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm very thankful that the things in my life that took place did, because it has led me to where I'm at today.
Of course.
Okay? So we'll move on from that, because I can get very emotional.
Yeah.
And talk about that for a long time. And we're coming down to the near end of what we're going to be talking about today. The last one, and I think this one is something that we have to talk about. One, because of your love of aliens, but we need to talk about Heaven's Gate.
Oh, man, yeah, Heaven's Gate. Heaven's Gate.
Marshall Applewhite was the leader, and I, for the life of me, can't understand how he was charismatic. And I'll let you expand on this, because this is your baby here.
Oh, yeah.
He led the members of his cult into a mass suicide in 1997.
Mm-hmm.
And here again, in 1978, there was a mass suicide. And you would think that those people would have learned, like, don't drink the Kool-Aid, so to speak, right? So I'll let you, since your love of aliens is deeper than mine, I'll let you talk about this, because my understanding from living through this, just want you to know, I remember this, that they were waiting. The only way they could get on the alien spacecraft to take them away to heaven, presumably, was if they died.
Yes.
And Marshall Applewhite led them. When they found them, they were all laid out in bunks and beds, if I'm not mistaken. And it was kind of a gruesome kind of scene to be one of the people who found them. But I know you have a lot more information about that than I do.
Yes. So essentially, the Heaven's Gate religious movement was clearly a cult. It was started by Bonnie Nettles and Mr. Applewhite, like you were saying. Basically, the belief that, like, Christianity as a whole was going to undergo a massive transformation once we got 2,000 years past the death of Christ. It's very common in a lot of Christian-based cults that, numbers play a huge telltale sign of when you can predict something big is going to happen.
Well, especially apocalypse.
Especially
numbers.
apocalypse.
Anytime they can ascribe something to the apocalypse.
The fun thing about Heaven's Gate is that they're not really classified as a Christian cult. They're considered a ufologist type of cult or UFO religion, okay? Long story short, they were talking about how on the year 2000, the aliens that seeded us here on Earth were going to come back and bring us to a new level of ascension. And they were hiding in their spaceship behind Halley's Comet. So Bonnie Nettles actually died of cancer a couple of years prior to their mass suicide, which really threw them all off because she was supposed to be like the main shepherd that led them to this ascension.
Yeah, she died in 1985, and she had taken the name T.I.
T.I.
And he took the name Doe.
Yes.
Or Do.
So on basically this day when Halley's Comet was coming by, they all dressed up in the same outfits, which were like these blue sort of sweatsuits and Nike New Balances, or I forget what they were. It's just tennis shoes, and they're all identical. They all stood on top of this hill, and he had convinced his followers that as the comet was coming by, that UFO was going to suck their consciousness out and put them in these new bodies. Really fucking awkward, I'm sure, when the comet passed by and they were still standing there on Earth. So then I guess Applewhite was like, my mistake, we need to go shed our bodies right now. So they all went back to their bunks. And at this point, they had like, what was it, sunk cost fallacy? They had already invested so much money, time, and effort into this big final day, and then it didn't happen. So that's why, for a lot of people that are confused, like, why would they all take suicide medication when they missed the boat, essentially, so to speak? It's because they were in so far deep, they're like, fuck, we just have to do it. And then they all killed themselves.
Yeah, so I found like an autopsy thing. All bodies were found on beds, cots, or mattresses. A 3x3 shroud of purple fabric was laid over all but two bodies, upper torsos and heads. So the shroud was over their heads. The two that didn't have shrouds had plastic bags over their heads.
Whoa.
Okay. Each was wearing black long-sleeve shirts, black pants, black or white socks, and a new pair of Nike tennis shoes. All had close-cropped haircuts.
Do you know what I thought was really interesting about this, too? So they didn't drink the Kool-Aid. They ate this like drug cocktail that was mixed in with applesauce and pudding and then washed it down with vodka. And then the bags over their head was supposed to induce the asphyxiation. But something I thought was really interesting when I was doing my research, each of the members had in their possession, on their body, a $5 bill, okay, and 75 cents, which apparently was the vagrancy fine at the time. I just find that really interesting. Some people thought that the idea was that after their spirit leaves their body, their physical form still stays down here, but they would be useless and probably become homeless. So they're like, well, we'll give them one good day of paying off a vagrancy fine. Just so basically, yeah, 39 people, including Applewhite himself, all committed suicide, hoping to hop on the tail of Halley's Comet and float away from space and the Earth to get to the higher level ascension, I guess.
So I like to pick on you. I'm pretty sure that if this had been presented to you, you would have joined.
I probably would have, honestly. I mean, it all made sense. The idea that I kind of have some beliefs that maybe aliens started human life as we know it here.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't,
Okay, I'm going to have you look at this guy.
He looked
Applewhite.
nuts. No, yeah, he looked crazy.
I'm just saying, what would you have followed him? Because I was joking, and now you're scaring me, Jacob.
He looks like I watched an interview with him a year or two ago, and one thing I thought was hilarious was that it was like a 5-minute clip, and I rewatched it twice because I was like, this motherfucker didn't blink at all.
No.
The entire 5 minutes.
Yeah, this guy scares me. I mean, I like a good scare, but this guy, I'm glad he's dead.
Yeah.
I hate to say that, but I'm glad he's dead. God, Jesus, look at him.
It just
look at his eyes.
It just sucks that he had to take so many people with him. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's just weird.
Do you think, just to wrap this up real quick, do you think that on the next pass of Halley's Comet, there will be another cult that kind of believes this stuff?
I certainly hope not. Listen, anybody out there who wants to join a cult, We have a cult of loving everyone and doing good and living your life.
There you go.
And it's called the Cult of Humans. I'm joking. Wouldn't want to be a cult leader. Do you have anything else, Jacob, that you want to talk about?
You know, what I like that we talked about these cults. If any of these sounded enticing to you, outside of morbid curiosity, be very careful, because some of the websites and stuff that we talked about and some of these organizations, I'm telling you, if they catch you at the right moment in your life, you can easily find yourself sucked into these ideologies the way I did with the CCMP or NATLFed. So just take everything with the show notes that we're going to be publishing and everything. Really be careful when you guys are digging around on this information.
Yeah, I do think that we have one last cult to talk about, and I know it's going to be controversial, but I think that we would not be doing what we intended to do if we didn't talk about Scientology.
Oh, yeah. The Scientology, for those who aren't aware, was started by a science fiction writer named L. Ron Hubbard, who was actually directly quoted as saying, if you ever want to be like super rich and powerful, start a religion. And that's a paraphrase, but that's basically what he said. And he went out and did exactly that. The belief system, you know, you could just put it in as any other sort of cult. There was one central leader, Mr. Hubbard, who was apparently in possession of the one true knowledge. And that if you donated enough money to the Scientology church, eventually you can work your way up the level system and gain this forbidden knowledge. And when I say that these people are literally everywhere, I do mean everywhere.
Yeah, it's really important that we distinguish, however, between Christian Science and Scientology. They are not the same thing.
Two very different things.
Two very different things.
I just real quick, I'll tell you a story about how I went to a Brazilian jiu-jitsu tournament in the winter, I want to say like 2018. It was in Nashville. So me and my twin, we go to this tournament. We're both going to be competing. And it was a large venue, kind of think like a convention center type of thing. And they had various booths set up. You had people selling T-shirts and compression shirts, and some people were selling acai bowls and snacks. But then there was one booth off to the side that had a large table with a pile of hardback books called Dianetics by L. Ron Hubbard. And they had this very beautiful woman standing by the table that would try to entice you to come by. And she would say something like, "Come get your levels read." And you're like, what in the world? So Zach, after our matches were done, we were still there supporting the rest of our team. He goes, dude, I'm going to go see what the fuck that's about. And I was like, Zach, there's something really odd about that. I don't really know what's going on. Well, he goes over there and he grabs the machine. He sits down in the chair and they hand him two little like toilet paper roll sized metal pieces that are connected to a wire in a box. Mm-hmm. And it starts reading what's called his Tetons, which is part of the cult ideology. It was by that time that I was close enough to read that it was Dianetics and L. Ron Hubbard. I realized that we were interacting with Scientologists. They started to ask Zach what his name was, where he lived. And I immediately grabbed him by his shoulders, stand him up, and said, drop that right now. He was like, what? I said, we're getting the fuck out of here. And the person was like, oh, no, don't interrupt. You'll have your turn next or something like that. And I go, nope, no, thank you. We're good. And we start walking away. And Zach goes, what the fuck was that for? And I say, dude, those are Scientologists. And he goes, like off the South Park episode? I'm like, yes, those are Scientologists. And they were in a Brazilian jiu-jitsu tournament of all places. It was so weird.
Yep. There's lots and lots of actors, actresses, and musicians who are members of the church cult. I mean, and people you wouldn't think about. John Travolta.
Really?
Is
John
a member.
Travolta?
Mm-hmm.
Holy shit.
Let's see. Dougie Fresh, the rapper.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I know Tom Cruise.
Tom
for
Cruise.
Sure.
Absolutely, yes. I mean, there's just all kinds.
I know Beck is.
Mm-hmm.
The artist Beck. And then the guy who played Earl in My Name is Earl. He's also a Scientologist, which I thought was crazy. So I remember when I found out that Beck was a Scientologist, I was like, that can't be true. Sure enough, he is. Also, that scumbag that played Hyde in that 70s show, also a Scientologist.
Mm-hmm. Also, Aaron Cairo from Brell Skateboards is part of Scientology. Yeah. It's why he left the show for a while to go do his inundation or whatever they call it
Really?
At the campus, yeah.
Have you ever driven past a Scientology temple before?
Yes.
They're immaculate. And
They are.
they almost look cartoonishly kind of nefarious, too.
Yep. So, family, that's all we've got to say about cults. As disturbing as it is, we've given you a lot to think about.
Yeah. I hope that anybody listening to this, hearing mine and Ed's personal stories about potentially being in close proximity or even sucked into sort of cultic organizations, that it can happen to anybody, you know? And don't feel ashamed. If
Right.
you're listening right now and you're like, oh, no, I'm part of a cult.
Yeah, or been thinking about it.
Just don't think that I'm such an idiot and I should feel bad. Just get out. Just get out. Just realize that the grass is greener on the other side, okay?
Still a bitch to mow.
Hey, family. Ed and I are thinking about spicing things up with an After Dark episode. We're talking about unfiltered thoughts, listener call-ins, some adult libations, and maybe even a room full of special guests under the moonlight. If that sounds like your kind of adventure, we'd love to hear from you. Head on over to our social media pages at ravensvail.com and drop us a comment. Let us know what topics you're itching to explore when the stars come out. Your feedback is the magic that will make this show glow.
Now, family, you adults have a few chores to do. Go on over to ravensvail.com and see about doing your chores on social media. Follow us on all the social media platforms that we've made available just for you folks. Like, listen, subscribe, and follow wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you don't mind, leave us a good rating and a kind comment. You can find the Ravens Vail Cauldron podcast on your favorite podcast platform. If you haven't already, just search for the Ravens Vail Cauldron podcast. Again, make sure you hit the follow button to stay up to date on our latest episodes.
Oh, and tell your friends about us, won't you?
So until next time, family, see you soon.
The Ravens Vail Cauldron is a production of Small Raven Media. Today's episode was hosted by Ed Bolden-Greer with co-host Jacob A. Garner. Audio engineering and sound design by Nick Devan at Nicky D Sound. Copyrighted 2024, Small Raven Media. All rights reserved.